The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has been one of my most anticipated games since its initial announcement. Breath of the Wild is one of my all-time favorite games, and I have been pretty confident that the eventual follow-up to it could be even better. Well, after several years of anticipation and a very slow drip feed of information, Tears of the Kingdom is here, so let's take a look to see if it lives up to the immense levels of hype behind it. One of the most impressive things about the gameplay of Tears of the Kingdom is its commitment to detail and the level of creative problem solving that it allows for. If you think you can do something in this game, there is probably a way to make it happen. Tears of the Kingdom takes full advantage of the foundation laid by Breath of the Wild to get even more creative with its puzzles and possible solutions. And it does all of this while giving you a brand new and even more interesting toolset to work with. Tears of the Kingdom swaps out the Sheikah Slate runes for the new abilities of Link's magic Zonai arm. Ascend allows Link to vertically pass through any solid surfaces that are above him. Rewind reverses any movement an object makes. Fuse allows you to graft items and other materials to your sword and shield. And finally, Ultra Hand allows you to move and connect any objects that you come across. The game does a great job at giving these tools a nice balance between utility and creative freedom. I may not have been using Ultra Hand to create any of the wild contraptions that you'd see on a viral Twitter clip, but I was able to wrap my head around the mechanics of it enough to be able to create an airship or a boat that would get the job done. The same can be said for the rest of the abilities as well. At first blush, Ascend and Rewind can seem kind of situational, but I quickly found myself rewinding all of the rocks and barrels that the moblins would throw at me. And once I decided to try to ascend through a stone talus, it completely changed my approach to how I deal with them as well. Fuse might be my favorite of the new abilities. One reason is that it made all of those monster parts I was getting feel like they had a purpose. I didn't really bother with making elixirs in Breath of the Wild, so I constantly had a surplus of key swings and Octorok eyes. In this game, however, seeing what kind of horn a monster would drop made me rather excited when I came across a new foe. Fuse was also the ability that I feel like the silly ideas just came the most naturally to me for. These silly ideas included putting a luminous talus heart on a shield to light my way through the depths, putting a minecart on a shield for a makeshift skateboard, and fusing a flame emitter to a boomerang for a flaming tornado attack that is way more flashy than it is effective. The other impressive element that Tears of the Kingdom nailed was how enticing they made the world to explore. I was constantly looking off into the distance and saying, "Hey, what's that?" and then setting up a beacon or stamping my map. I very rarely set out on an objective and finished that objective without being enticed by something else that I came across along the way. This is especially impressive when you take into account that I've already explored this version of Hyrule before. Tears of the Kingdom does a lovely job at making Hyrule feel familiar without making it feel stale. It does a great job at capitalizing on all of the built-in intrigue that simply comes with returning to a place. My first several hours with the game were spent just running to places like Hateno Village, Eventide Island, or the Great Plateau, and they all had something interesting to do there. All of the major towns are right where we left them 6 years ago, but they all have something new going on in or around them. Shrines make a return, but now have a whole new set of abilities that they've been designed around. Temples return in Tears of the Kingdom as well. I feel like they did a good job at blending the more free structure of the divine beasts with the more unique presentation that was present in the dungeons of the older Zelda games. And that's just what they did with the familiar elements of the world. When you factor in the sky islands, the depths, and the rather expansive network of caves on the surface, there's so much to do in this game, and most of it manages to be quite interesting. Going into Tears of the Kingdom, the story was one of the things I was the most interested in. I was not disappointed. The story of Tears of the Kingdom feels like it has a sense of urgency that Breath of the Wild lacked. A good example of this would be just comparing the main regional quests. For instance, in Breath of the Wild, when Link showed up to the Rito village, Va Meadow is just kind of menacingly circling the area. In Tears of the Kingdom, Rito Village is on the verge of being buried under a blizzard. I feel like the same could be said for the other 3 regional quests as well. Many of the side quests are also much more involved this time around. Each of the major villages all have some kind of interesting story happening around them. Hitano Village is in the middle of electing a mayor, Lurelin Village is being accosted by pirates, Kakariko Village is investigating the ruins that got dropped on them. Even the stables all have this overarching newspaper quest to partake in. And yeah, there are some quests that are still just gather up the 10 apples and give it to Scorpus kind of affair, but having more substantial quests around them helps to make the less involved quests more palatable. I love the characters in Tears of the Kingdom. This game has arguably one of the best casts of NPCs in the series. I was rather excited to see what characters like Hudson, Peya, and the whole of Gerudo Town were up to this time around. On top of that, the main players like Sidon, Riju, Pura, and a strong slate of new characters were all very charming. Breath of the Wild already had my favorite versions of Link and Zelda, and now Tears of the Kingdom can add favorite Ganondorf to its resume as well. His introduction at the start of the game was ice cold, and the more you see of him, the more it becomes clear that this is the most threatening and possibly the most unhinged he has ever been. As for Link and Zelda, they are still the emotional core of the story. Link still has the duality of being stoic in the cutscenes, but an absolute goofball in the gameplay, and Zelda's story is a very intriguing follow-up of where she left off in Breath of the Wild. Overall, between returning to one of the best versions of Hyrule, the grandiose story moments, and the immensely strong cast in this game, Tears of the Kingdom has quickly become one of my favorite stories in the Zelda series. Tears of the Kingdom has some of the best character designs in the series. I really enjoy Link's new hairstyle and all of the new armor sets that he can get. Zelda's new look is also really neat. Ganondorf looks the best he ever has. The man looks like he could beat an army to death with his bare hands before he even unsheaths his sword. And there were plenty of new character designs or updates to old characters that I thought were visually interesting as well. I liked the performances in this game. The two standouts to me were Matt Mercer as Ganondorf and Patricia Summerset as Zelda. Matt Mercer manages to go from being smug and in control, like the opening scene of the game, to later on being very unhinged and mad with power perfectly. And Patricia Summerset improved as Zelda immensely between the two games. She manages to portray the moments of hurt and exhaustion that Zelda goes through so believably. Conversely, all of the more pleasant moments that Zelda gets to have are elevated because she does seem genuinely happy. All of the other characters with voice performances are pretty solid as well, whether it was Sidon's overall excitement when he was on the screen, or Rauru and Sonia's comforting parental dynamic that they had with Zelda. One element that Tears of the Kingdom absolutely nails is its moments of spectacle. I would not say that there were any dungeon bosses that I found particularly difficult, but oh doctor, I had a lot of fun fighting them because all of the set dressing was so grandiose and cool. The new overworld bosses are more challenging on the mechanical side of things, but also maintain the same sense of spectacle. I was in absolute awe the first time I fought a Gleeok. The music in Tears of the Kingdom walks a nice balance between the more subdued soundtrack that Breath of the Wild had, while also having some absolute ear-melting tunes in all of the right places. All of the game's more grandiose moments were punctuated by a really lively score. The main theme of Tears of the Kingdom has become one of my new favorite songs in the series, and the game has a plethora of other tunes that I've been humming or thinking about constantly since beating the game. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is an absolute must-play. It is easily the most fun I've had with a game in the past 3 or 4 years. The sheer commitment to detail allows for such a broad level of player creativity and freedom. I played this game over the course of about 3 weeks, and it never felt like it was outstaying its welcome. Every day I played Tears of the Kingdom, I felt like I accomplished something. Sure, sometimes it wasn't anything stat-wise, like doing a crazy amount of shrines or side quests, but I always felt like each day contained a nice adventure for me. When this incredible gameplay experience is paired with a world that I am invested in and characters that I adore, Tears of the Kingdom comes out to be one of the best video games that I have ever played.